Good morning. Well, I didn't get much sleep last. Oops. Good morning. Well, I didn't get much sleep last night, so you must excuse me. I just dropped off my lovely son at the babysitter. I made a video the other day about emotional pain. I'll give the link below. And I was just reflecting on my own journey and thought to myself, well, it's all very well posting a video saying let's acknowledge that when you're making a decision to freeze your eggs, you're probably at a juncture of immense complex emotional pain anyway, because of life and expectations and goodness knows what else. You might not be as well, I fully acknowledge that, but it's not unlikely. But then I thought to myself, great, someone's watching this, and what are they going to do? They're going to maybe blame themselves for not moving beyond it. I don't know, I just wanted to share a story of what happened to me, which comes down, I think, again to why I wanted to make this series of video posts for women who are younger, and to realise that they might be feeling disempowered because they thought they'd be married with kids by now or with a partner by now, but actually you're a lot more, as a woman with your fertility, you're a lot more empowered now than vis-a-vis your fertility, all other things being equal, than in 5 years' time. So it's a bit like each birthday, not thinking how old you are, but thinking you're going to look back and realise how young you are. And we're in such a youth obsessed culture that I think when we hit a birthday, like, I don't know, 35, something like that, 33, 35, whatever, then we look back and we think, oh yeah, when I was younger. And then because we're in a youth obsessed culture, we look back to particularly what we look like, let's face it, when we were younger, and we probably look better because the barometer for that is a youth-based society. And I should add, on a biological level, it's linked to fertility. It's a mark for your attractiveness. It's to an extent, like symmetrical face and stuff, as far as I know, extent related to fertility. You'll have to fact check me on that, I'm not exactly sure. But I mean, if somebody is healthy, then they're more fertile, they're more glowing, then they're more fertile. And then there's that sentence, all other things being equal, which I'll explore in another video, because I've got into online fights when I tell women to, you know, if you're younger, you're more fertile, and then someone says, I know someone who's 25 and can have kids. I'm not talking about all other things being equal. Anyway, but the way to look at your birthday, which is healthy, is to say, I'm 35 today, but relative to when I'm 45, I'm a lot younger. I'm going to look back when I'm 45 as to when I'm 35, and be jealous of how young I am today. And then the next step is to acknowledge that you might not be feeling it for all kinds of reasons, but at 35, in fact at any age, you change your perspective, you change your life, you're a lot more powerful than you may feel. And one of the things in your power is you're still able, hopefully, and certainly relative to the youth, in 10 years' time, to preserve your fertility. But even together with that, it's very difficult. So the story that I wanted to relate is that when I was in my dating years, in my 30s, which, by the way, I found really horrible. I mean, I had a very great relationship in my 20s. Didn't realise what I had. It was a relationship that kind of organically evolved. And then when I got to kind of, from my 30s, like dating with a purpose, with marriage in mind, I think I made the worst choices. I think because I came from a place where I didn't have functional role models. Whereas when I was detached from that, I sort of flowed and everything turned out great. But even goodness knows what, it's all retrospective, and until I'm fully enlightened, I think all of my opinions on this excuse me, speak, junk and wishful thinking, and I don't know, it's too personal anyway. But let's just say in my 30s I was dating and I was going out, and it's also the time when you start realising, you start noticing people pairing off and not being available, and then unfortunately a lot of things in Sex and the City are correct, a lot of things are junk. One of them was about, and I think it was in the original book which I read, it was actually an excellent piece of literature. It was about the dating flip, that like up until a woman's 30, she says, maybe Carrie says it in the book, don't know who, women have all the power, and men have less power, they're chasing after women. And then when you hit 30, it flips the other way around, because suddenly you're more tense about kids and stuff like that, and men have the upper hand. I hate to say it, but it's true. And even if it's not true, mind games start coming in, so that because you're being pursued by all these men, you don't trust what they want as well, because they're just into sex. I don't know. For me, things got very distorted. I'm sure I think guys are arseholes to me. I must have been an arsehole as well. I can't. I'm sure I rejected some like amazing men over rubbish reasons and suspicions and goodness knows what. I think it would have been. I don't know. Thing is, I don't know. I look back and I don't know. So that's why, and it's not because I'm not self-aware. It's and I think the reason why it's a little bit amorphous, the whole thing, is one. It comes down to the fact I'm still carrying lots of self-judgment, and in my 30s I carried lots of self-judgment about it. So the story is, which I finally get to, is that I wasn't actually brought up going to a gynecologist, something I discovered you have to do in your 30s. So I went to one for a checkup when I was, I would say, like 32, actually. And as I said, it was a time where people were beginning to pair off. So when I'd see a guy who looked nice, I'd automatically glance at his hand to see if he's got a ring. So I go into the gynecologist's office, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice looking man. I glance at his hand, he's got a ring. It's just proving to me this is just, well, the good ones are taken, little script going in my head. And he did the exam, and he said to me, can I ask you a question? And by the way, I don't live in England, so people are a lot more forward here. I live in a hot country. He said, let me ask you a question. How long have you been dating for? So I said, okay, like 21 years? He said, okay, if you haven't met the guy in 21 years, how about you start the journey to becoming a mother now? Because if it hasn't happened the next 21 years, how do you know it's going to happen in the next few years? You might have trouble conceiving. Why not just start now? Now, I might be wrong. I might have got the story wrong. I might have been 35. I don't know. I was in like my early, mid-30s. And I wanted to cry. I can't remember if I actually did cry. I suddenly cried when I came out of the room. I felt like immense humiliation. Like, not only was he looked like a nice guy, and he's good looking, and like he's married, and he's a fucking gynecologist, but he's holding a mirror really to my face that I didn't want to see and I didn't want to consider. And I think it was also that saying this was like in another parallel universe, this would be like an eligible man who's telling me to give up, and together inside that was associated with self-judgment. Now, if you're listening to this story, you might be horrified because it's a very in-your-face comment for a doctor, and I'm in a culture where people are quite in your face. After I froze my eggs, The guy, like that one, I don't take offence at all. He was speaking for his own good, and it was sensible, and it was advice that I ignored for many years. That's the other thing that I wanted to say. Another time I'll explain all the weird stuff the other gynecologist said to me. But the point is that like if I'd gone ahead and either started the journey to solo motherhood, which I didn't want to, like I do want and I did want a healthy relationship, a partner, a family, all of that, which is very hard for me as a solo mum because I don't want to bring up my son with a feeling of lack. So even acknowledging that, it means I'm like carrying the energy of a lack. But I don't really have that so much because I'm so filled with love. I'm filled with fear about how I'll cope about a million things, but I see that happens with people in couples anyway. But my point is that I just it was like someone drops a truth bomb on you, and obviously it wasn't a black and white truth bomb, and obviously all around me you see examples of women who go on to have kids in their 40s, and people are single for years and then suddenly meet someone, they get married, they get pregnant. It's got nothing to do with any of the social markers of a job or looks or like any of that rubbish. It's like love does make the world go round. It does happen. All I can say is that like it's like I turn around and ran, and I just like double down on dating. And had relationships and they didn't work out, and I don't think they obviously weren't the right choices. But it's also dating from a place of sort of panic as well. Now if someone triggers you, then it means they're not doing it to you. There's this element inside which is already raw and vulnerable. And it's like a wound that you're protecting, and they're pressing on the wound, and it reminds you of the pain that's already inside. So obviously before he said what he said, which was good advice, and it doesn't mean that he was telling me to do it. He was asking me to open my mind to consider it. And it's not been an easy journey for me to take. I've been sort of my back against the wall because I've wanted to be a mother so deeply, and so much didn't want it in this configuration. But in order to be a mother, there's no other choice. While I'm acknowledging that, things could change in the future, but at the same time I'm like, well, I'm happy with what I've got. The whole point of saying this story is that if you saw my other video about acknowledging that you're coming to this decision at a point of emotional pain, it's also very natural to clam up and not taking a decision. But it's important to recognize that not taking a decision is taking a decision. And I think everybody will be different. I mean, if I'm going back now and reflecting, because the truth is that at the time there wasn't a law here that you could freeze your eggs privately. I'd have had to freeze them abroad. But I could have done that. I could have at the time. Now you can freeze them privately in a private hospital or a public hospital and pay money out of your own pocket when you're in your 30s, just to preserve your fertility. And you can do it. Then it was less widespread, more complicated, and actually the rates of the eggs thawing and surviving was a lot lower. So honestly, who knows? Like, there are no definite answers to anything, but let's just say it was information coming at me that I internalized. I took with that information the decision that I would, in my gut, like I just was not there, and I was like, no, I'm gonna relationship. I really want to find somebody, want someone, family, as in partner, and then kids. I would say that after I froze my eggs when I was 39 and a half, that the dating afterwards was not entirely easier, but it was a few degrees earlier, because at the time I believed I had a really high chance with those eggs, which I actually didn't. I'm very blessed that I succeeded with those eggs to conceive, because I believed that I had a good chance. I thought I had, like, sure thing, I can have 4 or 5 kids and there's 20 eggs, and that really was not the case. And maybe I can, but like the net result for me has been I don't know. It's painful being in relationships that don't work out. But I don't know what's the most painful thing. It might be the most painful thing is thinking what people think of you. And if you try and flow with stuff, it doesn't work out. You're judged for not being serious and looking for something deliberately. If you look for something deliberately and it doesn't work out, then I find that I have an automatic stream to blame myself in some way, which is kind of silly. Anyway, I don't know where this video is going really, except to say that if I'm posting stuff here and I'm like the gynecologist for you, in the sense I'm holding up the mirror and you sort of know inside that you should be reacting, you should be digesting this rationally, but it evokes a massive emotional response to kind of run away, then just please don't. Because the cost is very, very high. Very high, whereas I couldn't have, it might not have even worked for me then because of the egg freezing technology, and because I've had to, it might have even been the wrong decision for me if I had listened to that advice, thinking about it. But today the egg freezing technology is good, and you might be faced with fears that you don't understand, that you've bottled up, which you do with all kinds of other stuff. And it might actually be to do with other issues like how much you blame yourself for not succeeding in getting married or at being in a relationship, or this relationship didn't work out, whatever. But that's something that you're doing to yourself. And your fertility is a biological fact. So you might be carrying with yourself baggage, like just imagine yourself literally dragging around suitcases of all the self-judgment that you have. And you are a being with free will and free choice, and you can wake up one morning and you can just put down the baggage. Now, you might have to go sit on a mountaintop, have a religious enlightenment experience, do hallucinogenic drugs, I don't know, whatever. Like it's not simple to put down all our patterns of the past. I'm not suggesting it is, but it's possible. Like, you know, like this idea that every person is a potential Buddha. Like, you can put down the baggage, and your biological facts, truth, will be exactly the same whether you put down the baggage or not. So therefore the decisions to take, and obviously you know what decision I'm suggesting you consider, of freezing fertility. There's no perfect answer. You could freeze your eggs, and unfortunately they thaw, and in the thawing process they get ruined and they have to be thrown away. God forbid, you could freeze your eggs, you could use them in a few years' time and none of them could fertilise. You could freeze your eggs, you could go and the process to try and freeze your eggs and find out you have no eggs, which is not a nice thing to find out. You could go to freeze your eggs, you could get pregnant, and there's like, unfortunately, there's like a million things that could go wrong. But there's an infinite universe, there's an infinite amount of things that could possibly go wrong. I don't think that that's the way to look at it. The way to look at it is, it's a biological fact that as you get older, your fertility goes down. Your fertility snapshot in 5-10 years' time, 2 years' time, all other things being equal, is worse than today. Therefore, if you are going to make an effort to freeze your fertility in order to take whatever chances you have, sorry. There's free love and free hate, and there's free hate for my dog for certain dogs. Sit down. Good dog. If you're going to take the chance to freeze your fertility, then better do it now than tomorrow. And if you're carrying 3 tons of baggage of self-judgment, of kind of a why me, because that's what it comes down to, or whether you're carrying no judgment about why me, it makes absolutely no difference. And that is a type of magical thinking, that if you're judging yourself, you kind of think, if I can solve what's wrong with me, then everything will be okay, because your underlying belief is something's wrong with you. But the biology is the biology. And I just want to acknowledge as well how difficult it is to come to terms with this, because if you left home, went to university, didn't go into university, whatever, got a job, have your own place, live with flatmates, whatever, you're an independent adult. That journey to independence, it's kind of like, you know how like teenagers psychologically are like toddlers, they're pushing boundaries. But if you can imagine a toddler, they're learning to walk until they're independent, and then they become more and more independent, and then they have more and more control over their body, and then they have more control over how they interact with the world. If you want to get pregnant, may you get pregnant. When you are pregnant, you will see that the whole journey of pregnancy is a complete loss of control. I mean, when you give birth, your body is autonomously, your body is automatically expelling the embryo. There was a case of this poor woman who was raped when she was in a coma, and who just managed to give birth, basically. I think with very little intervention. Like, the body knows what to do. The struggle is trying to control what's happening automatically. And so, again, this is why it's so difficult to make these decisions, because if you're reaching this because of age-related infertility, you've had a good 15 years or whatever, or more, of being an independent human being with control over your life, and then you're considering taking a decision where you don't really know if the outcome's going to work. you don't know if you can really relax. You know, you have to get comfortable with the uncertainty of it, which is inherent in all of life, but it blings up in your face when it comes to pregnancy and fertility and all kinds of stuff like that. Anyway, I hope the story of the doctor and the mistake / not mistake that I made is helpful, because, you know, maybe you're watching these videos and you're thinking, I really should do this, and then you're going to sit down and your first step, say, is to pick up the phone to make an appointment with the doctor or the hospital, or suddenly you're looking at a medical system and how do I go about this, and then it can become very overwhelming, and then maybe you don't look at it again for another 6 months. But I want you to take the first step if it's something you're going to do. And it takes a while anyway, all of the administrations. It really is a case of taking the first step. It can take months till it's actually done, depending on the health system you're in. But because it's anxiety producing, it can be something where your reaction is to freeze. And I just wanted to share some perspectives that I hope will get you out of freeze mode if that's where you're at. Okay. Have a good day.